Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Hope you're all well. I can't see the comments for some reason. I came on a little bit before and I could see a few comments. Somebody said Salam Khalid, and then I left the studio. When I came back in again, suddenly I don't see anything written in the comments. So I don't know who's here and who's not. Could somebody just type something in quickly because, there we go. Assalamu alaikum. We'll watch back later, inshallah. All right, no problem at all. Okay, so let me get started because I think this is going to be a little bit long. Hopefully not too long. I've got some other work to do today. Okay. All right, okay. Relegating the messenger. I couldn't put that into the thumbnail, but I think that is what I put in the title, right? Of this live stream. Yes. Okay. So first of all, a bit of an apology for the for the image in the thumbnail. You can't really find the image which is relevant to this topic, so I put it into that meme, which sort of gives it a glance what I'm going to be discussing a bit here. But also, the good thing about this, I mean, I made notes about this topic a while back. I think a few years ago, and I fleshed it out a little bit. You know, I had the basically the germ of the idea a while back, and it was just sitting there in my notes. So I just fleshed it out to put it into this stream. And but the topic itself, I'm not even sure if it's still as relevant, because it might be that among the sort of the Qur'anist discourse, which I see, which at least I'm exposed to, and that's not a lot, to be honest. The issues I'm going to be speaking about today, I think the Qur'anist discourse has moved on from them, has evolved from them, which is a good thing. Because I was just thinking about this before I started, and I actually added this section here. Because I was thinking, okay, does this actually really matter to people anymore? Do we still have this problem? That I'll be discussing, at least this perspective on this problem, and I'm not sure that it is. I think maybe the Quranist community has largely evolved or moved past this. But anyway, let's get on with this because there's quite a few slides to go to. So here are the main points, the main issue I'm going to be talking about. Some perspectives used by Quranists, in arguments with non-Quranists. So, in arguments with the traditional Islam and traditional madhabs, which I think are neither correct, certainly not all correct, and not helpful. Okay, so the first one I put here is relegating the Quran's use of the messenger to mean the message. Right, so this is something which I used to see a lot. Like I said, I think I don't see it as much anymore. Maybe some of you could correct me if it's still being used a lot. But the idea being that whenever you see the messenger mentioned in the Quran, in your mind, you're substituting in the message, right? And sort of ignoring the person himself, the messenger, right? And it just means the message, okay? So that's what I mean in the title about relegating the messenger, right? That the messenger has been relegated to the message, okay? Which is something which which Quranists used to get accused of, in fact, but in a different terminology, which is that you guys consider the messenger to be just like a messenger boy, right? That the only thing which is important about him is the message which he delivered. So even though Quranists never used to say it in those words, they would put it in a different way in arguments that would come up, where they would say, okay, here this verse says obey the messenger, Well, what does a messenger do? He brings a message, so it means obey the message, right? And I don't think that's helpful. Or accurate, of course, it's not accurate. The other thing is creating added distance in importance of the use of the term prophet and Nabi and the messenger, right? Al-Rasul, right? So there's something which I used to see before as well, where the use of the prophet is sort of downgraded, right? And the use of the messenger is focused on with the meaning that it means the message. Okay, so that's something which I used to see a bit as well. And then of course there's the use of the you in the singular in the Quran, right? When it's addressing the Prophet directly or Muhammad directly. It is not looked at when discussing these two things, right? So when people look at it and say, here in this verse, the word is being used is the messenger, and therefore X, Y, Z. And I know, look, in this verse, the word being used is the prophet, and therefore X, Y, Z. Okay, well, what about those verses where it's just saying you? Okay, well, what are we to take that? Is that could we say that? Could we substitute that you for Muhammad? When it says you, it means Muhammad, the man, or does it mean both the messenger and the prophet? Right, but the point is, it's not looked at, and I think it helps to tie in or to highlight this problem, okay, of trying to relegate the messenger to the message and trying to downplay the prophet. Okay. So the first thing I'd like to look at is the example of a few verses which show the mentality of some of the hypocrites during the Prophet's time. But let me just give a little prelude here regarding the history and how much this is relevant. So this comes to history, but to summarize, the nifaq of the Meccans, both the immigrants and the later Tuluqa, those who, after the conquest of Mecca, converted, those are called the Tuluqa, right, was perhaps the most damaging. Okay, that nifaq was perhaps the most damaging. The traditional view, especially the Sunni view, is that, it's my alarm, sorry, is that the nifaq was mostly confined to the Ansar, right? And that, of course, is the traditional view because it was what was propagated by Quraysh who won, right? In the end, remember, history is written by the victors. So they lumped in all of the hypocrisy, all of the nifaq is really among the Ansar, and Quraysh, among them there was no nifaq, which isn't true. There are even in some of the surahs which are Meccan, there's mention of the nifaq. There's mention of those in whose hearts is a disease. There's mention of these categories of connected to nifaq. Okay, and its cause. What was the cause among the nifaq among the Meccans, right? Among Quraysh specifically, it's the same cause for their initial kufr, right? Why did they reject the message of the Prophet in the beginning? Why is it that so few people converted in Mecca? Which is true. In Mecca, very few people converted. A lot of the converts were from Banu Hashim and Banu al-Muttalib. They were from the clan of the Prophet and the two brother clans, right? The Banu Hashim and Banu Muttalib, right? And the reason why is because of the tribalism, right? Tribalism and rivalry and detesting where God had chosen to send his message and to who he had put it in among Banu Hashim, right? And the above reason is why a sign of nifaq, a sign of nifaq in the time of the Prophet was hatred of the close family members of the Prophet, of the Prophet's clan, and especially those among his family who supported him the most, like Ali, right? Hatred of them was a sign of nifaq. Why was it a sign of nifaq? Because the munafiq is internally a kafir, right? But he can't say that out loud. He can't express hatred towards the Messenger of Allah because that would be obvious kufr. So instead, they express the hatred towards, which is the origins of the hatred anyway, towards the family of the Prophet, because the whole issue of the nifaq, the people of Mecca, was they disliked that this message had come through somebody from this clan, right? There was that rivalry between them. Okay, so I mention this because some of the disdain towards the messenger mentioned in the Quran wasn't because he was the messenger. It wasn't because of the message, okay, but because of who he was. He was the Hashemite Muhammad, okay, and that's what led to some to kufr and some of nifaq. And we can see this in this verse. I didn't put the translation, sorry, but this verse where they are quoted as saying, the Meccans, if only this Quran had been revealed to a great man from one of the two great cities, right? Two great villages or townships, either a great man from Mecca or a great man from Taif, right? And that was the old alliance, which actually carried on into the caliphate of Umar and Abu Bakr, especially. They brought back that old alliance with the Jahiliyyah between Mecca and Thaqif, which is why, in the time of Umar especially, most of the governors of all of the empire were either from Quraysh or from Thaqif, right? The point is that they were actually willing to follow this message, right? The issue wasn't the message. The issue was who the message had been revealed to. I remember reading the seerah, the biography of Martin Links, and he has this pithy phrase, which in this context he has backwards. He was saying that the Jews were in favor of the message, but against the man, right? They were against the man. So they were happy, they accepted the message, but they did not like that it had come to a non-Jew. Whereas the Arabs were generally accepting of the man, but rejected the message. And that isn't exactly true. Okay, in both cases, it was about the tribalism. So that is the historical reason for those then. Okay, but it has its parallels even then and relevance even now, because the root cause of it is, in the end, it's in the human heart. It's a disdain that others should be placed above oneself, or that we should submit in any way to others. It's that same that same reason of shaitan. I'm not going to bow down to him. I'm better than him, or we are equals. Why should I bow down to Adam? Okay. Now, the earlier versions in the time of the Prophet was mixed up with this tribalism, right? The willingness to defer to others from my group, from my tribe. So if this Quran had been revealed to somebody from my clan, from my tribe, I'd defer to him. I'd accept it, right? But I have an unwillingness to do so if it is from the other clan or the other tribe, okay? Because they are no better than us, right? So that's putting it into it. So, it's like shaitan would be saying, think of shaitan there as like a group, okay? Why should we bow down to him, right? Or to them, right? If you think of it in terms of this group tribalism, it's the same root issue, right? It's this pride and this arrogance, right? So in that kind of mentality, the truth is irrelevant. It's irrelevant, and it's swamped up in the jahl and jahiliyyah of my country or my tribe, right or wrong, right? We're going to stand for my guy, whether he's right or wrong. But damn, I wish that he was right, right? I wish that it was my guy who had received this Quran. Okay, so that's the issue. Now, why am I saying this? Because I think the cause of this splitting between the messenger versus the message has, there are two causes that I can see, right? Or did see. Again, I think the Quranist arguments have moved beyond this, as far as I can tell. But firstly, why is it that some used to or do try to sort of relegate the messenger to the message, right? And say that whenever the messenger is mentioned in the Quran, we should just interpret that as the message rather than the actual messenger, as the actual text says. Well, firstly, it's a bad argument to try to dismiss hadith. So some make this argument in order to try to dismiss hadiths, right? And unfortunately, that just ends up giving them legitimacy, right? Because if you're saying, well, the reason why I don't have to listen to this or that is because I'm following the messenger, and the messenger is the message, and the message is in the Quran, and so I don't need to follow the hadiths because I don't need to follow the messenger really. I just need to follow the message. Okay, and so that it becomes this thing where you've given legitimacy to some of the things which are in narrations. Okay, but you're just saying I don't need to pay as much attention to it. Okay, that's the first reason. And the second reason is that same pride and arrogance mentioned above, the unwillingness to submit or defer to others. Okay, perhaps imagining it as a slight against oneself. Okay, so the human beings and the human heart, they don't change. Just as there were people of the past unwilling to listen to another human being, right? The Quran mentions that the only thing that prevented people from accepting faith is they said, did Allah send a messenger, a human as a messenger? Why a human? Why not an angel? Right? So human beings are like well, yeah, I'll defer to an angel. I'll accept the message from an angel, but I don't want to accept it from a human being, right? It's that bit of pride is in there. That bit of arrogance is in there. Okay, so messenger versus message. Is there a difference? Yeah, of course, there's a difference, right? And this is not to deny that there is. I'm not trying to say that there isn't a clear difference. Okay, but what God says is messenger. Okay, what God says is messenger. The verses that say obey the messenger simply can't be just swapped out with the meaning obey the message. Okay, it's not the same. Okay, if you're going to put it bluntly, it's a lie against Allah. Right, it's a lie against Allah when you just say obey the messenger means obey the messenger. No, it means obey the message. No, obey the messenger means obey the messenger. Right, there is no obey the message in the Quran. Right, we don't have that. There's no verse saying, أطيعوا الرسالة or اتبعوا الرسالة. No, it's all أطيعوا الرسول, اتبعوا الرسول, follow the messenger, obey the messenger. Okay, and by the way, there is in fact in the Quran no instance which says obey Allah by itself even. Okay, not on its own. It is always coupled or linked with obey the messenger. It's either أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول, obey the messenger, obey Allah and obey the messenger, or it's obey Allah and his messenger. These kind of things. It's always together. There's not a single verse in the Quran from beginning to end which says just obey Allah, right? Which is an important thing, right? It's not something that we just swept under. Okay. The messenger should therefore never be just relegated to the message just to make a point, just to have an argument, right? Just to try to have win one over against the non-Quranists or the traditional viewpoints. No, we have to be honest with the verses. The verse says obey the messenger, and we should treat it as that, okay? And not just try to diminish that and say that means obey the message. Okay, so let's look at an example, right? One of the main examples is this verse here. This verse doesn't even have the use of the messenger in it. So it says, until they make you the judge. Okay, so it doesn't say the messenger, right? The verse goes, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. But know by your Lord, they will not truly have faith until they make you, right? So it's not saying until they make the messenger. Okay, it says until they make you, right? A judge concerning that over which they dispute among themselves, and then they find within themselves no discomfort from what you, again, not from what the messenger, but from what you have judged, and submit with full willing submission. So this again, it just shows that trying to relegate the idea of, this is all about following the messenger is just about the message, right? And you look at a verse where somebody's telling you, the verse says "Ati'u Rasul," obey the messenger, and you just say, but what does the messenger do? The messenger brings a message, so it really means obey the message. Well, here that word is not being used. Okay, so that kind of sort of nitpicking. I don't want to call it nitpicking, because it is, it is trying to sort of like put a logic to it, but at the same time, it is sort of drawing the verse away from what it actually says. Okay, the messenger is the messenger. The messenger is not the message. And here, it's not even using the word the messenger. It's talking directly in the first person singular about him, the man receiving this. Okay. Now, the full context actually shows how they, who are the hypocrites, by the way, who claim Iman, seek to get judgment from the Taghuts, okay, who are men, right? But when they are called upon towards what Allah has revealed and to the messenger, who is later addressed as you, they are averse, right? And the key point is that the verse says, the key point is that what is revealed and the messenger are mentioned separately. That's one key point. So going back to this verse, you can see it here. It's an upcoming verse. It says when they are called to what has been revealed and to the messenger, so two separate things. Okay. And then the verse ends by saying that, but the aversion isn't what God, the aversion which God records in the verse isn't actually towards what is revealed, but to the messenger himself, to the man. Okay. So again, recall their wish that they thought they wished the Quran had been revealed to a greater man. Okay. We're going to go through these verses in a minute. There's also the aversion that they should come to the messenger and allow him to seek forgiveness for them. So there's also that verse which shows again that these are all indications and signs that the aversion of the hypocrites here is to the messenger himself. It's not to the message. Okay, they are averse to the messenger himself. They don't want to have to go to this man and take from him or submit in any way to him, or ask him to ask God to forgive. Right? They don't want that. Right? It's that pride. So let's look at these verses. It starts from Surah 4, Surah An-Nisa, from 60 onwards. It says, أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ يَزْعُمُونَ أَنَّهُمْ آمَنُوا بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ يُرِيدُونَ أَنْ يَتَحَاكَمُوا إِلَى الطَّاغُوتِ. Do you not see those who claim they have faith in what was revealed to you and to what was revealed before you? They wish to refer legislation to the Taghut, to other people, to men, of course. Of the end, the Taghut is other people. It's not, idols or anything, inanimate idols. وَقَدْ أُمِرُوا أَنْ يَكْفُرُوا بِهِ, while they were commanded to reject it. And Shaitan wishes to lead them far away. And here's a verse, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ, and when it is said to them, come to what Allah has revealed, and does it stop there? No, come to what Allah has revealed and to the messenger. وَإِلَى الرَّسُولِ. Okay, وَإِلَى الرَّسُولِ. So what Allah has revealed is, of course, the messenger. The message. Okay, here the message is being separated from the messenger. Okay. When it is said to them, come to what Allah has revealed, the message, the Qur'an, right, and to the messenger, what do you see? What's the reaction of the munafiqeen? رَأَيْتَ الْمُنَافِقِينَ يَصُدُّونَ عَنْكَ صُدُودًا. You see that the munafiqeen, they are averse, or they turn away from you, from the messenger, right? Not from what God has revealed. It's not that they're turning away an aversion from what Allah has revealed. What the verse is here recording, what Allah is here recording, رَأَيْتَ الْمُنَافِقِينَ يَصُدُّونَ عَنْكَ صُدُودًا. If that had just been removed and just يَصُدُّونَ صُدُودًا, it would be general to both what God had revealed and to the messenger. Or if they had said, يصدون عما أنزلنا صدودا, right? They turn away, or in the version, from what we have revealed. But no, it's been specified here that the issue of the hypocrites is the messenger himself, right? It isn't really the message. It isn't the message. Continuing on from the same verses. فكيف إذا أصابتهم مصيبة بما قدمت أيديهم ثم جاءوك يحلفون بالله إن أردنا إلا إحسانا وتوفيقا. So how will it be then when disaster strikes them because of what their hands have put forth, and then they come to you swearing by Allah, we intended nothing but good conduct and accommodation. I'm just reading that as is. أولئك الذين يعلم الله ما في قلوبهم. Those are the ones whom Allah knows what's in their hearts. Okay, what is in their hearts? Well, it's that pride, right? It's that pride, that the aversion to the messenger, right? It's shown up their pride in the same way that Allah commanding Shaitan to do sujood to Adam showed up his pride. Okay, if Allah had commanded everybody to do sujood to him, Shaitan would have done his sujood like all the angels, and it wouldn't have become clear. It wouldn't have appeared. What's inside wouldn't have come out. Okay, but in this case, here, that's one of the reasons why God sends human messengers, because it pulls out from people this pride. Okay, so it says يعلم الله ما في قلوب ما في قلوبهم, what's in their heart. فأعرض عنهم, so turn away from them, and that's indicating that they are full of jahl, right? Because the Prophet is a teacher, he's supposed to teach, but the one type of person that you cannot teach is the jahil, right? Which is why the Quran always commands the Prophet, أعرض عن الجاهلين, turn away from the jahilin. Person who is filled with jahl just cannot be taught, so turn away from him. So these people, these munafiqeen here, they have jahl. They have this jahl, this jahiliyyah again. Jahiliyyah, that tribalism. Okay, so turn away from them. وعظهم, right, and admonish them. وقل لهم في أنفسهم قولا بليغا, and say to them, speak to them far-reaching words. And this actually, this incident can be found in some of the narrations. And continuing. And it's very interesting that the next verse is this one, which we hear a lot, right? وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنَ رَسُولٍ إِلَّا لِيُطَاعَ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. We did not send any messenger except to be obeyed by the permission of Allah, right? So again, this is what we're talking. So if those who try to relegate the messenger to the message, when they just read this verse here, right, and they say وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ رَسُولٍ إِلَّا لِيُطَاعَ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ, and we had not sent a messenger except that he be obeyed, they will look at it and say, but hey, messenger just means the message. Well, in context, it's definitely not just about the message, right? We are talking about the man here, right? And it's even in this verse itself, I think it's very clear. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ رَسُولٍ إِلَّا لِيُطَاعَ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Right? We did not send any messenger except that he should be obeyed. وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ, and this is again going back to show up, to bring out that pride inside them, right? It's been pushed. The issue is, Allah is not letting go of the issue until it's solved. Okay, وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ إِذْ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ, and if they had, when they had done injustice to themselves, come to you. Right, come to you, right? Not go come to us, or make istighfar to us directly or straight away. Come to you, fastaghfirullah, right? Come to you first, seek forgiveness from Allah in your presence, the messenger's presence. وَاسْتَغْفَرَ لَهُمْ رَسُولٌ, and the messenger had sought forgiveness for them. لَوَجِدُوا اللَّهَ تَوَّابًا رَحِيمًا, they would have found Allah forgiving and merciful. Why this? Why this? Why is this being put here? Right? That they would have found Allah forgiven, merciful if they had done all of this, but in your presence, sought forgiveness from God in your presence, and you sought forgiveness. Because again, it's humbling them. It's trying to remove the issue which has been basically mentioned in all the verses up to here, right? This aversion that they have to the messenger. يَصُدُّونَ عَنْكَ صُدُودًا. Well, oh really? you want to just have this aversion to the messenger out of pride. Well, I'm going to make it such that you have to come to him and get him to seek forgiveness for you and seek forgiveness in his presence. And if you do that, then you are proving that you've taken away that pride from your heart, right? The arrogance, and I will turn to you in repentance and be merciful. That's what's happening here. That's why, this section is in here. Okay, it's ilaj, it's curing something, right? It's trying to get them to act counter to their ego, right, in order to cure it, right? Because the way to the alchemy of the heart, as they say, is to act in opposition to the base traits which you have. Okay, and then again, then it comes to the verse that we mentioned at the start. فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Right? So no, by your Lord. And again, look, all of these indications are again, this would rancor in the hearts of the hypocrites who have this aversion to the messenger. When they hear these verses, here even the swearing is done by the Lord of the Prophet. فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ. No, by your Lord Muhammad, by your Lord or Messenger, by your Lord or Prophet. They have no faith. They will have no faith until they make you the judge concerning over that which they dispute among themselves, right? ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُونَ حَرَجًا ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُونَ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. Then they don't find in themselves, in their souls, in their deep souls, any haraj, right? Any discomfort concerning what you have decreed, and they completely submit to it. Okay. So again, I hope the message is coming across clearly, despite my semi-mumbling through it. What's being pushed here is their egos are being pushed down in the presence of the messenger, right? By making them have to have this kind of submission towards him, okay? For the sake of, of course, it's in the end it's submission to Allah, right? But that is how Allah does it between the creation, right? Lowers your pride by making you, because everybody will submit to Allah, right? If Allah appears before everybody submits, then how do you know who has pride and who doesn't have pride? Who has arrogance, who doesn't have arrogance, right? It's by making human beings have to submit to others in this way, and to take from messengers or to follow others, where that comes around. So these verses, among many other points of them, of course, serve as a warning with respect to nifaq, of not wanting to come to what God has sent down and not wanting to come to the messenger specifically, right? There's also the link, which I didn't put here, with the verse which says, those who wish to divide between God and his messengers, right? يريدون أن يفرقوا بين الله ورسله, right? That's the verse in the same surah, 150. But I don't want to go through that because this is going to end up being even longer. So, sort of like a concluding point I want to put here. There was. Again, I'm saying that I think that the Qur'anist community has moved away from this a bit. There is an artificial separation between Muhammad and Muhammad as the messenger that is sometimes not entirely warranted. Okay, I say sometimes because it is important to look at these distinctions, right? But I think some try to draw the line too strongly. Okay, and there's also an artificial equating of the messenger with the message that I think is always entirely unwarranted. Okay, and just to repeat, it was developed, I think, as a weak way to defend some Quranist positions. Okay, a defense which had implicit acceptance of hadiths portraying the messenger in a negative light or teaching commanding what is against the Quran. So the defense becomes, we don't have to obey, follow any of that, because obeying the messenger means obeying the message. Okay, so that's what I think happened in some cases. Point 2, going to the next issue, which is prophet versus messenger. Okay, Now, so there's also this relegation of the prophet and saying the prophet didn't have to be obeyed or followed or listened to. And so anytime the prophet is used in the Quran, it is relegated a little bit. It's given a lower stature, a lower weight as compared to the messenger, with the idea that the messenger means the message. Okay, so that's the highest thing. Okay, so you have the message as at the top, right? And then you have you have the messenger, but really that's just the message. And then a little bit below that you have the prophet. Okay, so I used to hear things, flippantly being thrown out like, well, this verse says prophet, it doesn't say messenger. Okay, so the verse doesn't count for whatever is being talked about or discussed in the argument for X, Y, or Z. Okay, now there is of course a functional and real difference between when the Quran uses prophet versus when it uses messenger. Okay, but what I want to warn about here is that there was a lack of actual investigation into that difference, and instead there was an attempt to weaponize this distinction, okay, in Quranist arguments, okay, which clearly hasn't been studied. Okay, this distinction hadn't been studied or investigated properly, right, by many of those who try to weaponize it. Okay, so those who used to say, okay, this verse says prophet, not messenger. Okay, they were trying to utilize that in an argument when they really hadn't investigated this difference of prophet and messenger and why one is used and why the other one is used. It was just something thrown in the middle of debates and arguments, right? And the verse says prophet, it doesn't say messenger, so ignore it for X, Y, or Z or some other thing. Okay, but let's actually look at a few of these examples. Let's look at some examples and try to see, think about it, right? Try to swap it in your mind. In this verse here, it says prophet. Why doesn't it say messenger? Okay, why doesn't it say messenger instead? Think of each one and say, okay, if I had said messenger, what would mean differently? So let's just look at a few examples. And also, you generally, with that mentality of focusing the word the messenger, of converting that in your mind to the message, then some of these verses, it seems to me, would be better suited if messenger had been used rather than prophet. Okay, so take this verse for example, النبي أولى بالمؤمنين من أنفسهم. The prophet is more deserving or more worthy of the faithful than they are of themselves. Now, wouldn't it, again, given that mentality, wouldn't it have worked better had the messenger been used? So saying the messenger is more worthy of the faithful than they are of themselves, and then converting that into your mind, the message is more worthy of the faithful than they are of themselves, right? But that isn't, that argument dies here because the verse doesn't say the messenger, right? It says the prophet. Okay, and Nabi. Here, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي ولا تجهروا له بالقول كجهر بعضكم لبعض أن تحبط أعمالكم وأنتم لا تشعرون. O you who have faith, do not lift your voices above the voice of the messenger, no, the prophet. Okay, if this had said the messenger, the argument would have went forward, maybe something like this, that do not speak above the message of God. Do not speak above, what the message is saying. The voice of the message has to be higher than anybody else, and nobody's voice, what they say, should be higher than the message. Okay, that's what would have happened, right? People would have taken this, well, some would have taken this, the place where it says and the Nabi, which, if I had said the messenger, they would have translated that into their minds as the message. It means the message. Okay, don't raise your voice above the voice of the message. But, again, that argument flies out the window because what's being said here is the prophet. Okay, Sultan Nabi, the voice of the prophet. Again, Ya ayyuhal Nabi, إذا جاءك المؤمنات يبايعنك. O you prophet, when there comes to you the faithful women to pledge allegiance to you. Who are they pledging allegiance to? The messenger or the prophet? Okay, which one would you rather have? Let's say, right? There are some, I think, who used to have a mentality which clearly would push them to wish that this verse had said messenger rather than prophet, because then they could just say, okay, it's about the message, right? And again, there's more. I mean, I'll go through the rest very quickly. يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين يثنين عليهن من جلابيبهن. O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and the women of the faithful, etc. The legislation about dressing modestly, right? So this is legislation. It's a message being sent to them, but the word being used is the Prophet, not the messenger. إن الذين يكفرون بآيات الله ويقتلون النبيين بغير حق. Truly those who show ingratitude or reject the verses or ayat of Allah and kill the prophets. Okay, and interestingly, I don't think the Quran mentions much about killing the messengers. It's usually about killing the prophets, right? يقتلون النبيين, right? بغير حق. Why the نبيين? Why not al-mursaleen? Why isn't it mentioned that killing the messengers, right? Why is it killing the prophets? إن أولى الناس بإبراهيم للذين اتبعوه وهذا النبي. Indeed, the most worthy of Ibrahim among the people are those who followed him, right, in submission to Allah, and this prophet. Why not and this messenger, right? Why is it and this prophet instead of this messenger? Well, if it had been this messenger, you could have again put forward that the most worthy of all people is this messenger because his message is so close to the message of Ibrahim or something like that. Okay. ولا يأمركم أن تتخذوا الملائكة والنبيين أربابا, and God does not order you to take the angels nor the prophets as arbab, as lords. Okay. Al Imran. Why not take the messengers as lords? Why is it again specified Nabiyyin? And of course, this verse and other, there may be some other examples, but this verse has a context where it's all just talking about Nabiyyin, right? So maybe you could say that's why Nabiyyin is mentioned here, because before it and after it, there are verses which say the Nabiyyin, but you're just kicking the problem down the road. يا أيها النبي قل لمن في أيديكم من الأسرى. Here the Prophet is being told to give a message to the captives. Okay, so again, this is a message being given to them. Why is he addressed as Nabi instead of messenger? يا أيها النبي حسبك الله من تبعك من المؤمنين. O you Prophet, enough for you is Allah and whoever follows you from the faithful. Why isn't it, O you Prophet, O you messenger? Because here this verse seems to be about how for the Prophet to do his job of conveying the message, he has enough in Allah and in those who have followed him among the faithful. It means he has a good enough core of believers, of followers, in order to be able to fulfill his duty of being a messenger. Yet the verse says, Ya Ayyuhan Nabi, etc. I think this is the last one. Not the last one. So this one is about the Prophet legislation about divorce. Okay. And again, it says, Ya Ayyuhan Nabi. The next one is, Inna Allah wa malaikatu yusalluna ala nabi, that famous one that God and His Messenger send blessings upon the Prophet. Now, for those who say that salat here means duty or following, then it should be, it would make more sense, wouldn't it, if it said messenger rather than prophet? But it doesn't. It says prophet, right? So if it was the other way, truly God and His Messenger, yusalluna ala nabi, I don't know how they interpret it sometimes, the salat here, but they have the idea that what's being really asked here is to follow the Prophet, to follow his teachings, to follow what he says. Well, if that's the case, then you're talking about following the message, right? And so shouldn't it be saying ar-Rasul rather than an-Nabi? Okay, and then there's a switch in this verse. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. those who harm Allah and His Messenger. La'anahumullah, God has cursed them. The very next verse. Why is it here now gone back to Messenger? Okay, here we have Nabi just before it. In the next verse we have Allah wa Rasuluhu. And you never see a Nabi, Allah wa Nabiyihi, right? Allah and His Prophet. That doesn't appear in the Quran. I think I mentioned at the end of this. I mentioned that somewhere at the end of this slide. Last thing, okay, here is distinguishing it in practice, right? So if you were alive, okay, if you were alive then, with the Prophet Muhammad in front of you, then what the Quran refers to as the Prophet or the Messenger or you is in the end the same entity in front of you. It's the same person, okay? And he didn't used to have different hats or badges or uniforms or symbols that he would wear and swap out as he sort of switched between those roles, okay? So that you would know, or so that the followers would know that he is now being a prophet, and now here he's being a messenger, and now here he is being just Muhammad, okay? That wasn't the case, okay? In the end, all of these roles are united in that one entity, in that one being, in that one man, okay? There wasn't any of swapping of hats, right? And the people around him, of course, wouldn't every once in a while ask him, okay, are you now being a prophet or are you now being a messenger? It wasn't like that, okay? I wrote it here so people wouldn't say, aha, so you are being a messenger at the moment, not a prophet, by some sign, or he says, I see you had your Muhammad hat on when you said X, so sorry, but I don't want to do X, Y, or Z, right? So when he used to say things or command things or tell people to do this, or they were supposed to obey him, right? It wasn't that he was only to be obeyed when he was making it clear to them that I am now acting as a messenger. No, he was to be followed always, right? Obeyed always. Okay. ما أرسلنا من رسول إلا ليطاع بإذن الله. The point is that the man Muhammad was the messenger and the prophet, both together. Okay, just like it is written for Musa, وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ مُوسَى إِنَّهُ كَانَ مُخْلِصًا وَكَانَ رَسُولًا نَبِيًّا. Right, and he was a messenger prophet. Okay, and mentioned in the book, Moses, indeed, he was chosen, he was a messenger. Here it says, and the prophet in the translation, but there isn't even an and in the Arabic. It said, كَانَ رَسُولًا وَنَبِيًّا. Doesn't say that. It says كان رسولا نبيا. And in the same way, Muhammad كان رسولا نبيا. Okay, so trying to use those sort of distinctions in refuting hadiths or Quranist arguments with non-Quranists regarding the extra Quranic material, you simply won't get anywhere compelling, in my opinion. This verse here I just put in at the end. It's of course where similar to that. الذين يتبعون الرسول النبي الأمي, those who follow the messenger, the prophet to the Gentiles. Okay, and the next verse where he's commanded to say قل يا أيها الناس إني رسول الله إليكم جميعا, right? And at the end of it says, so therefore have faith in Allah and His messenger, that the Nabi al-Ummi, His messenger, the Nabi, the Ummi. So these are united roles in one person. I mean, we all know that, but again, I'm just pointing this out because I have seen this thing where there's too much trying to draw these hard lines and try to make arguments from it. Okay, these are things to be pondered in the Quran. Why does Allah use here prophet and here messenger? But I think the practical implications are being exaggerated in some cases, or were at least. The last final note is a distinction not often mentioned, that the Quran never says Nabi Allah, right? We have that in narrations and hadiths. People would ask the Prophet, Ya Nabi Allah, or Prophet of Allah. That phrase would be used, okay? But in the Quran, there is never Nabi Allah, right? It's always just Rasulullah. I'm not sure how significant that is, but it is seemingly deliberate, right? Because it's all over the Quran, right? We always have Rasulullah, we never have Nabiullah. So any theory of a difference between prophet and messenger should have an explanation for this, okay, for this to be complete. And that's it. That's the end of that presentation. How long were we going on for? Oof, quite a long time. 50. 50 minutes, but it's done. Assalamu alaikum. Let's see who we have in the comments. Hey, assalamu alaikum. We'll watch back. Oh, okay, this comment came back. It wasn't here before. And assalamu alaikum, Muhammad Hassan. And Fawuzi Mukhtar. Alaikum assalam. And Qur'an massage. Massage. That sounds like a Saj, right? Is that like the Indian sounding ending to that? All right, okay. So I don't have anybody backstage wanting to come on. So if anybody wants to come on, please do. If you have any comments about what I've presented here, or even better, if you have your own tadabbur to share with us, please feel free to come on. The link should be at the top of the chat. Let me put it in again. And now we have Tahseen. Okay, I'll bring you on in a minute. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. How are you, brother?
I'm good. How have you been?
I've been good as well. I've been recovering a little bit and stuff. Been learning a lot, going to school. Yeah, you know, it's like every day for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually mainly came on because I wanted to, in a sense, you know, like the Palestinian and Israel situation. A lot of the times, I actually looked into a video where a woman was actually talking about the meaning of the Arabic word shaheed, right? Like many actually link it to being more as someone being a martyr, right?
Yeah.
But the woman was talking about like something like it can also be something like witnessing, right? The person witnessing something like injustice, right?
Well, that's primarily what it's about. You know, in the Quran, when it talks about shahada, it's actually a big topic in the Quran. Shahada lillah, witnessing for the sake of God, right?
Yeah.
And that is what when the Quran says a shuhada, which is translated a lot of the time as martyrs. Okay.
Yes.
It's only the secondary. It's only secondary. A shaheed is only a shaheed secondarily because he can fall under the idea of witnessing, right?
Yeah.
When somebody is a martyr, right? He has stood up as a witness, right? You can't be a martyr for a just cause. Go out and die for it. Just doing that is standing up and bearing witness. Okay, and it's that's the reason why a martyr is called a shaheed.
Yeah.
But the actual main shuhada in the Quran are mentioned in a number of verses. You know, it says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu shuhada'a lillah," or you have faith, be shuhada'a lillah, be witnesses for Allah, right?
Yeah.
Even against yourselves or against your parents and close kin. Okay.
Yes.
That doesn't mean you have being a martyr against them.
No, I mean
going out and fight yourself
like
or your
I don't know
parents
why.
or your close kin. Yeah.
I don't know why it's linked like that now. It's a being martyr, jihad. It's like something like that. But there's always a deeper meaning to it that people just like linked it to that meaning. So it just means that, other than just not looking more into it. You know, like bearing witness, or not bearing witness, like witnessing something, like injustice itself is something more. It's more of an interesting way of seeing it, because then it makes sense. Because you're witnessing injustice, you're witnessing that, then it's held to account, you know, for me at least.
It's speaking out, right?
Yeah,
Bearing
exactly.
witness. I mean, there are some great shuhada. I mean, you talked about the Palestine, the Palestine-Israel conflict. I mean, one of the greatest shuhada of this is Norman Finkelstein, right?
Yeah.
He's an amazing shaheed, right?
Yeah.
On this issue, right? He stands up and bears witness on this issue, even against himself being Jewish, against his, you know, his people of his family, undoubtedly, right, and his nation, right?
Yeah.
But he does it, right? That is like that is really real shahada.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. I actually like that kind of idea that Shaheed can be more like anyone can be a Shaheed in that sense. So it's like standing up for injustice, being a witness, being a, like a witness to, let's say, what is present to you, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I
Again, you have
think.
the verse, وَالَّذِينَ بِشَهَادَاتِهِمْ قَائِمُونَ, right? And those
Mm,
who, by their shahada, or
yeah,
respect to their shahada,
mm,
they stand up for it. They are upright with
yeah,
it, right?
yeah,
And that's why the opposite is such a big sin as well. Shahada to zur. The Quran talks
yeah,
about bearing false witness. You know,
yeah,
witness is one of the big sins in the Quran, right?
yeah,
And those who avoid false testimony are praised.
yeah,
والذين لا يشهدون الزور. They
yeah,
don't give shahada to the zur, to the falsehood,
no,
right? Because
yeah,
there are times you will be pressured um,
yeah,
to give a false testimony, right? Again,
yeah,
I mean, the Palestine Israel thing is a very good example of that, right? There are many
yeah,
people, celebrities and news anchors and people like that,
mm,
they are pressured to give their shahada, their testimony, right,
yeah,
for the falsehood. Okay,
yeah,
so, being able to not do that, just not do that, is in itself a very good deed, right? So the
yeah,
Quran mentions it among the. There's a list in one of the surahs which mentions it, right? وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَشْهَدُونَ الزُّورَ وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِاللَّغْوِ مَرُّوا كِرَامًا. Those who do not give shahada to the zur, right? Do not witness it, falsehood, the false
yeah,
statements, and when they pass by idle talk, they
yeah,
pass by it honorably, right?
yeah,
In Surah Al-Furqan.
yeah.
Hmm.
Hey, I actually also wanted to talk about the ninth surah of the Quran, Surah At-Tawbah. You know,
Yeah.
like people, I don't know. So I see some people like I ask questions about why the surah doesn't have the Bismillah at the start. I actually
Mm.
kind of looked into your post in Reddit, and
Mm.
it kind of at least gave me ideas of what to think about now. But what about this idea of like saying the Bismillah at the start? Like people have like this controversial view that you shouldn't say it because they either claim the surah was revealed because they say God was angry at the
Mm.
disbelievers or stuff like that. But it wasn't that case. It was something else. It
Yeah,
was
I mean, it could.
directed at the Quraysh. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never heard this idea that you
Mm,
shouldn't say
mm,
it, or
yeah.
it's like sinful to say it. You can say it,
Yeah.
but
Exactly.
again, I mean, it isn't there for a reason, and the reason
No.
is linked. Like I mean, I put in that Reddit post, which is a jumble, and you need to clear it up and maybe
Mm,
redo it properly.
yeah.
But the reason is, like I mentioned there, that it has to do with. Um, Quraysh, right? That
Yeah.
it's about how the Treaty of Hudaybiyah became void, right? The whole
Mm,
surah is about how God and the Messenger are now declaring that
yeah.
they're not breaking the treaty. Unfortunately, the tafsirs make it out that the
Yeah.
Prophet had these treaties with all of these mushrikeen,
Mm,
with all of these,
yeah.
and then when he became powerful enough, he just broke them all and said, "That's it. Now,
Yeah.
go on, I will kill you." But that's not what's being said.
No.
Um, when one side breaks a treaty, right,
Yeah.
the other side has to acknowledge it, right?
Yeah.
It has to say, okay, the treaty is broken, so now we are free from it. So that's
Yeah.
what's being said, right?
Yeah.
When one side breaks a treaty, the other
Yeah.
side has to declare, so that
Yeah.
everybody knows that they are
Mm,
not breaking the treaty, but
yeah.
say, we are free from it now. And that's what
Yeah.
the first word says, bara'a, freedom,
But
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Barala.
innocence. Right? We're
Mm,
innocent of this. Khalas.
yeah,
Bara'atu min Allahi wa rasuli, to those whom you had thing. Because and of course the verses all say how they broke the treaty. Right? They
yeah.
broke the treaty.
Mm,
So what treaty is that? The treaty that was known throughout the whole of Arabia, okay,
mm,
the main one is of course the Hudaybiyah, the Treaty of
yeah.
Hudaybiyah. And when they sat down to actually write this treaty, the
Mm,
Quraysh would adamantly refuse to allow the treaty to start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. They said,
yeah.
no, don't write Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So it wasn't included as part of the treaty. So when
Yeah.
this verse was revealed to say, that God and His Messenger are now, that the treaty is void, they are innocent of it now. Okay, it doesn't,
Mm,
it's been broken. Um, that would the Bismillah wasn't put in there. Okay,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
They refused it when writing the treaty, so it's been refused for them in this, which is an extension of the treaty, really, right? It's extension of saying, not the treaty, of the incident, right? Right.
Yeah.
It's the aftermath of the treaty. It's been broken.
Mm.
So they rejected the Bismillah in the beginning, so they don't get it here, right?
Yeah.
When the declaration is made that the treaty has been broken and it's void, and that's the reason. I mean, it's as basic as that, right?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that for example, Muawiyah, he got this. He clocked onto this. I mean, he was very clever, and that's why he actually fought against the Bismillah, right? So he was the one he was the first person to recite Surah Al-Fatiha without the Bismillah deliberately.
Oh.
You know,
Oh.
I think he deliberately did not recite the Fatiha of Bismillah. Why? Out of his rank and his khubth, his like his lowliness, his like childishness, his his rank and hatred.
Yeah.
He saw that Surah 9 Bara'ah, the Bismillah was taken out
Mm.
in because in direction towards Quraysh. So he said, okay, then you remove the Bismillah from this surah. I'm going to remove the Bismillah from Fatiha. That's what he did, and unfortunately, that's how the Ummah is right now. The Ummah right now, the Hanbalis and the Malikis, right? Half the Ummah, half the Sunni Ummah thinks that the Bismillah is not part of the Fatiha, right?
Oh.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's the only verse. It's the only
so it's like
verse
the Sunnah
that
of the
people have
Ummah,
doubt about.
basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the only verse, and it's actually a great sign. I mean,
Yeah.
Hassan al-Maliki puts it this way: that God has put a sign in the very first verse of the Quran to make you see that something is wrong, right? If
Yeah.
a clever person, they say, okay, the very first verse of the Quran, the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, is it a verse or isn't it a verse? Well, that's something that you can look into and
Yeah.
research, and it will show you the whole of the, a lot of the history is contained in that one issue, right?
Yeah.
How in the world did the Fatiha, it's recited for every single salah,
Yeah.
right? Every single salah, multiple times. How is it that the Ummah is not sure if the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is part of it or not, right?
And that's
And looking at that lets you see, it shows you the power of the of authorities, right? The power of the state, right?
yeah, the influence as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the influence, the influence.
That
So
yeah, that's a mess really. Nowadays, like let's say in our country now, I assume you heard there was I think a Christian man that actually burned Qurans, right, and I think he was killed, and I don't know what, he was a Kurdish man, and I saw like the entire Muslim community being happy that he was killed, because you're not supposed to burn the Quran, it's disrespectful. I personally, like, when I see like people trying to like mock Islam in this way, I personally think no one should give them attention, like they receive way too much attention.
yeah,
And that's for me problematic. We should know better than this. We shouldn't be giving these sorts of attention to these people, because we all know they're seeking attention and trying to provoke the Muslim community. And this in my country has really alerted, like, I don't know, it gave you like a bad reputation for like Muslims around my locals as well. And I feel as that as a community, there's always a way to at least not to clear up these misconceptions, to say no, we're not taught to do these sort of stuff, or at least
yeah. I
solve.
mean, there's a direct verse about this which says, that if you see those who mock God and His Messenger and His signs,
Yeah,
then just walk away until they they talk about something else. That's literally
exactly.
what verse says, right? That
Yeah,
when you see people mocking God and His signs, then don't sit
yeah,
with them until they go to a different topic of discussion. Right? You're just supposed
exactly.
to get up and move away. And it doesn't
Yeah,
even say never
yeah,
sit with them again. It doesn't say abandon them. It just says while they are on that topic, you get up and you leave. When they
Yeah,
change to a different topic, you can come back and sit with them, right?
exactly. I feel like
حتى
this.
يخوضوا في
Yeah,
حديث غيره. Yeah.
yeah. I feel like this isn't addressed that much to the Muslim community nowadays. It's more like it's not shown, right? It's
Mm.
you know like this. So this is a problem within our ummah to at least tell them that, well, even if they burn the Quran, it doesn't really matter. It's just for them to mock you. They're trying to get into your head. I've learned this a little bit more earlier in my age as well, because you're not supposed to take these people serious because they're trying to get a reaction from you, right? So
Mm.
that the media could pin it on Muslims. I don't know, but yeah, that's an issue on itself. I also wanted to actually talk about there was this one issue of like you know, ex-Muslims, right? People who leave Islam,
Mm.
like these apologists. I find it a little bit hypocritical from like you know, like they use Islam for content now, like ex-Muslimism, like their identity. I can see why they do these sorts of stuff, because reality, they just cannot abandon their past. They just realize they can just use this for clout. Just like even our Muslim Ummah is using dawah for clout as well.
Mm.
Like look at Ali Dawah and Muhammad Hijab. Look how famous they are. Even other people are joining them in the scene as well. And it's just
Mm.
to basically race to clout, as just to be famous, you know. Daniel
Mm.
Hakatichi, for example. I can't even say his name.
Yeah.
Look, look at how
Hakikachu
big
or
of,
something, yeah?
yeah, Pikachu or something. And look at
Hakikachu.
how much of, yeah, how much of clout he has. He knows that if he makes these sorts of videos being tried to stay relevant, he can get a big buck out of it and earn from it, instead of
Mm.
like actually addressing the issues, instead of just wasting people's time for absolutely nothing. I think there was one scholar that actually had one in mind. I think it was like Asim Al Hakim, right? He was like a Saudi sheikh or whatever.
No, he's
But
not Saudi, I don't think. He's not Saudi, but he lives in Saudi Arabia, yes.
yeah, and I think he was charging people like 300 to ask one question on like Islamic questions and rulings, which I just feel bad, because why would you go to a person like him and ask him for advice when he could give you like an advice like, well, this is haram, this is halal. I feel bad, you know, like
Mm.
it isn't that simple to, you know, like when you're new to Islam, right? You'd always assume that these leaders, like you mentioned, it's always the state that are like the leaders that are seen more above uh,
Yeah.
uh, compared to the other people that
Mm.
doesn't want to be seen much. And that's the problem, really. Even though we cannot do much about it, it's just to be staying patient, right? At least
Mm.
that's from my experience. That's at least how I experienced it from it. So what
Mm.
about from you? How did you experience these sorts of difficulties where some people have it difficult with this sort of situation?
Well, I mean, you're talking about first of all, the ex-Muslims and the Dawah guys.
That was scenes, yeah. Like the
Yeah, yeah.
content of
I don't pay as much attention to it anymore. But yeah, I mean, what I find sad is just that we don't have, like when I was growing up, we had people like Hamza Yusuf and Timothy
mm-hmm.
Winter. He's still around, but these people are not as active as they used to be, right? So
Yeah,
these were the people who everybody looked up to, and they were people who were actually very, very knowledgeable, right?
yeah,
So they were the people in terms of the general tradition of Islam. Of course, there were those who are opposed to them because they had Sufi leanings, and so
yeah,
especially the Salafi, the Wahhabi, those who were more influenced by the Saudi, you know, the
yeah,
Saudi-backed kind of scholars. They didn't like them, but they had others who were also quite knowledgeable. Now it's all YouTube personalities, right? It's all just
yeah,
um, that's what it comes down to.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Like I grew up with like watching these Dawa Boys videos, and I used to, at least I remember looking up to them, because I had this impression that they had like this sort of knowledgeable idea, until recently, when it was actually a few years back, when I just realized that when they were talking like very, very, very vulgar. You know, like this vulgar attitude, right?
Yeah.
Turns you away
Because
from them. Yeah.
because they're basically no different. They haven't really advanced much from their street days.
Yeah.
Street thuggery, the rude boys, the bad boys,
Yeah. Yeah. If I would,
how
yeah.
that's how they were. I mean, you
Yeah.
can tell from just their attitude and the way they speak and the way they interact with people. They're like that. They were thuggish before, and then if you become religious, if you're
Yeah.
thuggish and you become religious, you don't automatically stop being thuggish,
Yeah.
right? It takes effort. You have to actually work on
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. I mean that if I were to ever approach them, I would just advise them to focus on like their education or private lives. They shouldn't be throwing their life into social media just to get pressured into making these sort of videos when they can just damage themselves in the that will see
No,
even more, you
I
know.
don't.
The words hurt people, you know.
I don't think that would work advising them like that.
It
Um,
wouldn't. No.
no, not really. I mean that they're long gone into this. I mean,
Oh,
there are some things
yeah,
I guess. There are some people I guess that it's very difficult to get people to come back.
yeah.
Right?
I can
Quran talks
understand.
about people, reach a state where summun, bukmun, umyun, fahum la yarji'un. Deaf, dumb, blind, they will not come back. Right?
Yeah.
Um,
Mm,
so is what it is.
yeah. Well, that was my last question, really. I hope someone else at backstage can talk with you a little
Yeah,
more.
there's
Passionate.
somebody waiting now, so I'll
Yeah.
bring them on
Thank
now
you.
then.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. Assalamu
Okay.
alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Take care.
Mm, bye.
Bye. No, I already put you on. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
Ibad.
salam.
Alaikum
Hi.
assalam. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, good. How are you?
Your voice is very, very low. Could you
Yeah.
increase?
Yeah. Am I loud enough right now?
Still no, still not very loud. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, no, it's not very clear. Yeah, no, I can't really hear you, to be honest. Did you try putting in headphones or taking them off if that's what you have on? Hello? Hello?
Assalamualaikum.
Ah, there we go. That's a bit better. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. How are you?
Okay, it's better, but it's very choppy now as well. I can hear like a lot of like static or something when you speak. But it's
Yeah,
loud.
I'm just having some issue with my speakers for some reason and my
All right.
headset.
All right. Well, we can make you out mostly, I think. So it's fine.
Okay. Am I like loud enough?
Yeah, it's loud enough. It's just like very staticky, like bubbly. But it's okay. Go ahead. Hello? 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 No, can't. You can just hear only static now again. Can you try shifting things out again? Shifting your.
Hello?
I don't know your. Okay, yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so I actually had a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was like thinking about some of the verses, like lashing and cutting of the hands, and uh, I'm like a bit confused. What if those verses are there because God just wants to tell us that, I mean, like how bad adultery can be and how bad stealing can be, but at the same time, maybe the punishments are only meant for during those times. Can this be possible?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it can be possible. I mean, I see it as of course, you don't have to cut off the hands of a thief now. These were given because there was no infrastructure really. There was nothing. You have to remember what the situation was like back then in Medina and these places, right? So, for example, the Prophet didn't have prisons, right? He didn't have. He wasn't collecting taxes to be able to feed prisoners, right? If you have prisons, you have to actually look after them. You have to give them food. You have to actually build the prisons in the first place, right? So that wasn't there, right? None of that was there. So you have this punishment, which can be done in places where you have no infrastructure. Okay, but if you have the infrastructure, then there are better punishments, you can say. The goal is always justice, right? And there's more than one way to arrive at justice, right? So you can have more than one different types of punishments, which still end up providing justice. Okay, so that's one thing. Of course, there's arguments. For example, the Perfect Dawah, who comes on this channel sometimes, and he's got his own channel. He feels very strongly that the verse doesn't say cut off the hands, right? That it's saying, cut off their means, right? That the hands is just an allegory for their means of power, their ability to steal, right? So cut off their ability to steal. That means that, okay? Which isn't a punishment. It's more like a prevention, right? How are you going to cut off somebody's means to steal? Well, you're going to take away all of their in the digital age, take away their computer, their access to this. Like if they're stealing, things online, or how exactly you can do that. But the point is, there's that interpretation as well. Okay. But generally, like I said, what I would say is that these punishments, they were for a society which didn't have the any infrastructure for it. That's one thing. Second thing is to understand, for example, the lashing. It's for zina, and we have to understand zina isn't just extramarital sex, right, between like an unmarried person and a man and woman. Zina is only when there's a married woman involved, right? It's only when a married woman is involved. If the woman involved is not married, it's not zina, right? So an unmarried woman can never commit zina. An unmarried woman can never commit zina, right? Whereas a married woman always does if it's with somebody other than her husband. Okay. For a man, it depends. Again, it doesn't matter about the man himself. He can be married or unmarried. Okay. What defines if something is zina or not is if the woman he is with is married to another man or not. Okay, because it's really about the household and preservation of the household and lineage, right? It's the woman who gets pregnant, not the man. Okay. Every woman who has a child, that she knows that child is hers. It's come out of her body. But a man married to a woman, the child might not be his, right? If she's committed zina, right? That isn't a certainty, right? So the crime of zina is really about that, right? That's how it is in the Bible as well, I'm told, in the the original idea behind it. That's why you have thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. That's one of the commandments. You will not covet thy neighbor's wife. Okay. So when you see it in that way, you understand that zina is it's a big crime. Just extramarital sex between like a unmarried man and unmarried woman, there's no punishment for that. That's not zina. Okay. That's not zina.
Still like one of the major sins, right?
Sorry?
but it is still like one of the major sins,
Yeah,
right?
it's still a sin. It's still a sin. It's not one of the major sins. No, the major sins are
Okay.
the sins which condemn to hell. Which, if you don't do tawbah from, they will take you to hell. Okay, those are the major sins. Okay, zina is one of them. Okay, but sifah, the Quran calls the other things sifah, right? Like an unmarried man or unmarried woman, that's sifah, right? That isn't zina. Okay, that's quote unquote fornication. Okay, so the major sin there is only zina, which is when a married woman is involved. Okay, so don't. No man should ever try to mess around with a married woman, and a woman who is married should definitely, keep absolutely faithful to that. Because look, in the end, it's a big betrayal for everybody. Okay, a child could come from zina, and that child is now, everybody from the paternal side will be treating that child as if he's theirs when it isn't. Okay, the uncles, there's more people involved, right? The uncles will treat him him or her as a niece or nephew. Grandparents, they will look at them as their child when it isn't, right? It isn't their child because it's child of some other man who the wife committed zina with. Okay, the child of that is going to be somebody's brother, somebody's cousin, somebody's nephew, somebody's grandchild. Okay, and there's going to be inheritance, all of these things. Okay, which is why it's a major sin. Okay,
And
so that's why the lashes are for that, and that's why also accusing a married woman of zina has a punishment of 80 lashes. Right? There's no punishment for accusing an unmarried woman because it's not zina. Right? And there's no punishment for accusing a man. Okay, there's a punishment for falsely accusing a married woman. Okay, without providing the 4 witnesses, that gets a punishment. Okay, because that is what zina is. It's when what involves a married woman. Okay.
okay, and yeah, and another thing is that I forgot again. So another thing I wanted to ask is, do you think that it can be possible, like we all know that Prophet Muhammad was real? There's a lot of historical evidence. But do you think can it be possible that the stories we read in the Quran about Moses or Abraham can be more like allegorical stories?
I personally don't know. I think they are real stories. There are people who say they're just allegories and stuff like that. I don't think so. I think there's enough. First of all, of course, God did send messengers and prophets in the past, right? So why? And there's enough of them that were sent in the past to different people, and they had stories. So why would God need to make up sort of like give us allegories? Why not give us real examples from history in order to teach us? Okay, things from the real world, right? So that there's no need for the Quran, for Allah to provide us with allegorical stories when the real stories in the past are there, and of course he was witness to all of them, right? So if there's plenty of material in human history, put it this way, plenty of material in human history, especially among prophets being sent, for God to take the actual history of that and put it for us in the Quran for us to learn from. Okay, there's no need to give us allegories as if the real history isn't can't provide the teaching that God wants to give us in the Quran. Okay, from stories, right? So I don't see what's the reason for having allegories of these, for these stories being allegories. There's no reason for it.
So do you also think like the flood was real?
Do I think who? Sorry, again?
The flood that happened.
The flood, yes.
Uh,
Yeah. But I mean, I put this on Twitter, and I think I put it in my community post here. So, for example, the Noah's Ark, and he put in the animals. It wasn't all of the animals. It was just basically his animals, his farm animals, his, because the Quran talks about how, once the flood waters started to rise, then Noah was told to take two from each thing, right? There was no time for him to go around collecting two from every animal on the planet or in the globe or even in his own local area, and put them onto the ark. The floodwaters were already rising, and the idea is this: that he was promised that there's going to be a flood coming, and that he's going to be saved on this ark, him and his followers and his family. And so for them, the natural question would be what? The natural question would be, okay, but what about our livestock? What about our animals? What about our cows, our cattle, our sheep, our, camels, if they were there? What? No. So the answer is take 2 pairs of each and take them with you on ark so you can start over, right? So you can start your flocks again. That's what it was. Because the Quran talks about, how many azwaj there are, right? It talks about, thamaniyat azwaj in the Quran. It says, 8 pairs that we have sent, goats and sheep and camels and baqara and min al-ibn ithnain wa min al-baqari ithnain, right? So when the Quran is talking about, it tells Nuh to take 2 from each, that's what it's talking about. It's talking about his livestock, right? It's not talking about all the animals in even a local area, let alone the globe, right?
Yeah, but all of that must be like very ancient history, right?
Yeah, it's probably very ancient. Who knows when that was, right?
And even I think history is quite limited in proving existence of certain people or not.
Yeah, I mean,
Even if we don't have.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to actually do, right? To prove all of this ancient history and stuff. Can we even prove that Ibrahim existed or Musa existed? We're told by many that we can't, right? And that's how it is. The Quran says, وَكَمَا أَهْلَكْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ هَلْ تُحِسُّ بِهِمْ مِنْ أَحَدٍ أَوْ تَسْمَعُ لَهُمْ رِكْزًا, right? How many other peoples have we destroyed before? Do you hear about them anything, or even hear about them even a whisper? No, they're gone, long gone, right? And all of their stories are forgotten, and that's it. It's just what it is. You're not going to be able to find them again.
Yeah, and even I think the important thing for us while reading the Quran is taking a certain message from it, right? Instead of arguing about the existence. If it was real or not, and all of that.
About what? Say again, sorry, I didn't catch it.
When we read the verses, it is more important for us to take the message, right?
Yeah, of course, without doubt. I mean, the Quran is very ahistorical. I mean, it deliberately does not give you a lot of details in order to work out the history, right? That's deliberate. There are some stories where it just says, and then we raised a different people and sent to them a prophet, and the prophet said to them this, and that's all it is. We don't even get a name of the prophet, right? So there are stories in the Quran where it just says we sent them a prophet, and their prophet said to them this, and they replied this, and we have no idea where this is, when this is, the name of the prophet, the name of the people, nothing. Okay, we are just given the dialogue, which is what we're supposed to learn from and take.
And all of the prophets that ever came through the history of time, most of them are not even mentioned in Quran, right?
Yeah, most of them are not mentioned, right? It's mostly just the Israelite prophets, and that's enough, right? That's enough, because they're the ones who are most linked to the region, They're the ones who were the most well known. You know, they were you know, God made the children of Israel to be, you know, to be vehicles for that. So a lot of the stories of their prophets and stuff are preserved, even if not accurately, in their literature. So we have that, right? So that's why the Quran gives those stories, right? The other branch of Ibrahim, right? God chose Ibrahim and said that, you know, I'm going to use you through which to tell the story, basically, of guidance and turning away from guidance and kufur and iman and nifaq, you know, right? God chose Ibrahim for that, and you know, that is exactly what's happened, right? The whole world knows about Ibrahim and Abrahamic faiths and the stories of the prophets from Ibrahim.
Yeah. Yeah, and about Ibrahim, there is a verse in the Quran where I don't remember exactly, but where God tells Ibrahim to like cleanse the holy house, something like that.
Yeah.
So does that mean he was Arab? I mean, like that verse is talking about Medina.
No, it's about Mecca, but no, I don't think it is, because even the Quran talks about him speaking about having done this somewhere far away, right? So in one of the verses, he's making a prayer. Oh my God, I have placed some of my progeny, my descendants, in a valley which has no zara, which has no cultivation, close to your sacred house, etc. And it's clear from that he's talking about them as if they're far away, right? And you know, the traditional stories, of course, he came from Iraq, from Ur, and you know, God showed him the place of the sacred house. That's in the Quran, at least, right? With Bawwa'na Ibrahim Makan al-Bayt, and we showed to Ibrahim where the foundations of the house were, and he went and he built it. And so he was guided to that place. He built it, and then he went back to wherever he was, and he left Ismail there, and you know, and later on he made a prayer for them. But no, he certainly wasn't Arab.
Okay. And why do you think homosexuality is condemned in the Quran? I mean, do you think there might be some reason behind it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a fahisha in terms of, you know, it's an immorality. You know, the word fahisha means something which is out of place, basically. When something is out of place in such a way that it's ugly, right? Like the Arabs would say, for example, somebody is fahish at-tul, right? Somebody is so tall it's ugly. You know, like the type of person who is very, very tall, in a way where he's sort of gangly, and it's no longer an attractive tallness, right? The proportions are all wrong, you know, too thin and too long, right? That's fahish. It's fahish at-tul, right? It speaks about other things about being fahsha, so it's that sort of thing. So, you know, it's out of place. It's not the natural way of things, right? So it's a fahsha. It's an indecency in that kind of way, and so that's why it's haram, right? So Allah has forbidden all indecencies.
It might be like against the natural order of how things are meant to be.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's out of place.
Yeah, but and is it like one of those sins where someone is condemned forever to hell?
No, not at all. It's not like zina at all, right? So it's not one of the major sins. Well, it's actually a minor sin.
And brother, if I'm not wrong, you also have a background in science. I think you said that in one of your streams.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so I mean, like, you get to study about all of the stuff like evolution and all that?
Well, I'm not in the biological sciences. I'm in the physical, so physics and chemistry mostly, right? But yeah, I mean, I studied that stuff, and it's, you know, there's a lot of like arguments in it which basically destroy each other, right? So how does evolution work? Some scientists say this and provide us evidence, and other scientists say no, that can't be right because this, and they show how it's wrong. And every group of scientists showing how the other ones are wrong with evidence, right? So they sort of like end up tearing each other down. What I really like is the look into abiogenesis right now, which is the how did we get the first life in the first place, right? If you look up James Tour, he does a lot of that, right? So he's an organic chemist who looks into that, right? And if you look, he's got a lot of videos discussing that thing. Right? How do you get the first life in the first place, right? Because once you start, because people talk about evolution, to start evolution, you have to actually have a living cell to start with. Evolution doesn't work on non-living things. You need to have a replicating genetic organism for evolution to even start to work. But how do you even get to that in the first place?
Okay. And if I'm not wrong, evolution does not actually say that we evolved from this animal to human. I think it says that we all share the same ancestor or something like that.
Oh yeah, common ancestor. We have the human beings have a common ancestor, right? And then all primates have a common ancestor above that, etc. The tree of life.
Yeah. Okay, I also have one last question. It is regarding atheism. So we see there are many atheists who dedicate their life to charity, helping other people. But due to a bad representation of religion by the religious people, if you ask them about God and stuff like that, they would say stuff like God is a sadist, he's an egomaniac, and all of that. What do you think happens to these people when they die?
Same thing that happens to everybody else. You get judged by your deeds. You're not judged by your beliefs, right? And certainly not by rejecting obviously very bad beliefs, right? So unfortunately, the portrayal of God is very bad by some people. So they are right to reject that. But everybody in the end is judged by their deeds. I mean, the Qur'an is very clear about that, right? Your deeds are weighed. Whoever's deeds are heavy and whoever's deeds are light, right? That's what it comes down to. We're not here being judged on whether we all believe in God's existence or not. Atheism is a very, very recent thing, right, in terms of popularity. The Quran does not discuss atheists at all, right? There's no atheists in the Quran. When the Quran talks about kuffar, which is translated as disbelievers, all of the quote-unquote disbelievers or kuffar in the Quran, they all believe in God, right? There's no kafir mentioned in the Quran who doesn't believe in God, with the exception maybe of Fir'aun, right? He's the only one. But, he's an outlier in that kind of way. So, during the time of the Quran, everybody believed in God, right? And for the centuries after that, everybody believed in God. Nobody, the idea that God doesn't exist is a very modern thing, and it's happened because of the success of science, right? That's what's given it the most impetus, the most impetus around the world. And why there are so many atheists? Because of science, right? Because of the claims of science, which are very powerful claims.
Okay, so God is definitely unaffected by their ill talk, right? I mean, if someone would say he's a sadist, egomaniac, he destroyed people, why don't he stop wars and stuff like that?
Yeah. No, that's. I mean, these are such basic contentions that have been answered many times, right? Why doesn't God stop all evil, etc.? God isn't beholden to what people think he should do or shouldn't do, right? God has His own plan for us and for this world and for the future, which is long-reaching, right? And he's not going to like do that just because some atheist is challenging.
Yeah.
Okay, but brother, I have another person which I
Yeah.
want to bring on before closing up.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, no problem. Anytime. Please, come back again whenever you can. And if you have any, especially if you have something to share in terms of, tadabbur or any insights into Quran, I'd love to hear any from you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes, I will, brother. Thank you so
Yes,
much for your time. I will.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Assalamu alaikum. Take care. All right. Let me bring in one more person. Kamil. Assalamu alaikum. Hello. He's not muted, but can't hear anything. Kamil or Camille. Assalamu alaikum. Hello. Cannot hear you. Let me try and see if he's in the private chat. It says 1 sec. Okay. Okay, so he's gone out. Won't be back, I think. Assalamu alaikum, Adriana. Good to see you as always. Here we go. Hello. Hey, assalamu alaikum.
Nice. First of all, I wanted to think it's the first time I'm coming on the stream. Thank you, first of all, for this channel I've been following for a few years now.
Jazakallah. Jazakallah. Well, you're more than welcome to come anytime. Don't be a stranger from now on.
Yeah. I'm sorry I couldn't catch the stream tonight, so I didn't watch the presentation, so I can't join the Tadaburat.
It's fine. It's fine. It's actually like an old topic which I had some notes on. Maybe it's not even as relevant anymore, but if you want, you can check it out later.
Okay. I wanted to come back to the question that you answered to a few minutes ago on zina.
Yeah.
Because I was actually about to ask a question about the same subject, and you ended up answering half of my question already. It was about a verse saying that let me pull it up 1 second. Zani la yankahu illa zaniya. The fornicator does not marry except a female fornicator, polytheist, and none marries her except her, and that has been made unlawful to the believers. So before you answered my question, I didn't know zina, first of all, was only for married women. I thought it included premarital sex also. So my question was basically, in light of that verse, was it actually haram for a believer to marry a woman that has had premarital sex?
Yeah, well, again, a married woman, case, right? Yeah, in zina, basically, who's committed zina, who's guilty of zina. So, a person who, first of all, somebody's like that is somebody who has, that they've had the 4 witnesses against them, or they've, the oath taking that's mentioned in Surah An-Nur, where, if a husband doesn't have witnesses, right, then he can take those oaths to say, she is guilty, and she takes oaths to say, no, he is lying, which again shows that the focus is on the wife, right? Whether she committed zina or not, right? If you read those verses, right, they're all about, centered about her, and of course her and whoever was with her, right? But that's what it comes down to. Say it again.
No, I meant it as, would you consider it lawful for someone who's a Muslim who?
Yeah, if they're allowed to marry somebody who has committed zina, right? Yeah.
No, who hasn't committed zina in your sense. I mean, who has Not in the way that you understand it. I meant who has had premarital sex, but
Well, that's not zina, so there's no issue, right?
okay.
So somebody who has had premarital sex, right? If it's a man, if he's not done that with a married woman, so it's not zina. He's only done that with non-married women. And if it's a woman, she's never done that while being married, then it's not zina, right? And then there's no issue, right? In terms the question that's usually brought up with that verse is, is it forbidden then to marry a woman who has committed zina, or for a man to marry, for a woman to marry a man who's committed zina, or vice versa, right?
At least that's how I would understand the verse.
Yeah, I mean that would be a plain reading of it in terms of just what it says, But the way it's read, if you read it from the beginning, right? It's not saying from the beginning, haram. It is haram to marry a zani, and it is haram to marry a zania. It's not worded like that, right? It is saying, it's almost saying it as if this is something which is the way of the faithful. A faithful person will not marry a person who is a zania, and a faithful woman will not marry a man who is a zani. Okay, and then at the end when it says حُرِّمَ ذَلِكَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, it's in the passive, right? حُرِّمَ, right? It doesn't say, for example, حَرَّمَهُ اللَّهُ, Allah has made it haram on it. It says حُرِّمَ ذَلِكَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. It's not mentioned who is making it haram, right? And so this is a traditional also understanding in some of the tafsirs based on the language, that is actually the faithful, the believers, who are making this haram upon themselves. That those people of virtue, of virtue themselves, they would not do that. They make that prohibited on themselves, because they are concerned about their lineage and things like this. They're concerned about the sin, and so they would not approach that, right? All right, they want to be safe from that. حُرِّمَ ذَلِكَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Right.
I agree with your reading. It clearly, it's true. When you read it again, it sets them apart. As in, there is the way of the believers, and there is the way of the others.
Yeah. So they're saying but the others would, right? So the faithful will not do that, because the main verses, and I've mentioned this before, the main verses which list clearly who is prohibited and who is not prohibited to marry are the verses in Surah An-Nisa, right, where it lists all of the people who is forbidden to marry, and at the end of it says, وَحِلَّ لَكُمْ مَا وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ, right, and listed for you are all other women, other than these which have been mentioned haram. Everybody else is licit. It's allowed, right? Meaning that you can contracting an actual marriage with any other women is a valid marriage, okay? But those women which mentioned previously, it's an invalid marriage, right? If you make a marriage, if some man makes a marriage with his sister, it's void. It's not a marriage, right? But a marriage with anybody else apart from those listed is a marriage, okay, including somebody who has committed zina. But it's not a safe thing that you would do, right? And again, it links to why it's zina is about married women, because that situation where a married woman commits zina, or a man commits zina with a married woman, right? So that's why that verse is saying a faithful person, or a believing man, will not marry, right, a zania, right? It's about marriage, because this person has proved unfaithful with respect to marriage. They have not taken that vow seriously. That vow of marriage, they didn't respect it, right? They didn't respect it that first time. So you'd be wary of marrying somebody like that who could again, not prove faithful with respect to it with you. Okay.
Thank you for answering.
No problem. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, is that it? Or is there something else we got?
I think that's it. I didn't prepare anything. Maybe next time I'll join again.
No problem.
Or something
Anytime.
else. What time do you
Yeah, yeah.
stream at usually on Sunday?
It's either Saturday or Sunday, and around the time that I started here. So like 2 hours ago, whatever time that's going to be
2
for
hours
you. Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
in
Yeah.
Switzerland, so 7.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, around 2 hours ago from now, either Saturdays or Sundays, and bi-weekly. So next week, no, but the week afterwards, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how I try to do it anyway. And inshallah, yeah, more than welcome to come on next time.
Sure.
I try to encourage as much as I can if people come on to actually just to share. I'm more than happy to answer any questions and give my perspective. But when I originally started this, caravan of contemplation, as I called it, it was mainly to try to have
contemplate along with you.
Yeah, it was for
All
people
together.
to come on. Yeah, for people to come on and share any insights they might have had, any personal interpretations of something. So the more people that would do that would be even better. Right. So if you have anything that you've thought of or thought about, please do come on and share it whenever you can.
With pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Sorry.
In the chat, I'm Julien Lefranc. It's just a fake
really?
account. I didn't want to put my real name.
Okay. Yeah.
Me.
This one, right? This is you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Brilliant. Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much. Why did you choose that name? Camille or Camille? Is it?
No, that's my real name.
Oh, that's your real name. Okay. I see. Yeah. Okay, that's the real name, and the other one is a fake. Okay. Is it Camille or Camille? How do you pronounce it? Camille. Okay, brilliant. Okay, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Camille, for coming on.
Thank you. Until next time, brother.
No problem. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
So.
All right, and with that, I think we will wrap up. We know each other for a long time. Okay, brilliant. Adriana, it's always a pleasure to have you. This is going to be 10 years ago when I was doing the Quran for the first time. Okay, and Mr. Zen Islam is here. Assalamu alaikum. All right, okay. With that, let me end it. I've got a few things that a few tasks I need to complete before I call it a night. So Jazakumullah khair for coming on and attending. And anybody listening later, thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.